Willkommen in Teil 2. So, here you can see how the crack looked like after I took off the clamp. I cleaned that and then I made some tainted super glue, thin, whatever you call that. It kind of tried to match the color of the lacquer more or less, but this kind of crack will always remain visible. I'm just filling the crack with this red super glue, basically, with the tainted super glue. This, if you put this on this kind of Teflon block, like you see in my hand, this is thin super glue, like water thin. It doesn't get hard unless it's, you know, put on moisture or pressure or activator. So you have around a minute or two where you can use a toothpick or similar to drop fill that in the crack, unless it until it is above the crack surface. I will show in a minute. And then afterwards, when it dried, you can level that and sand that and polish that, so it really gets like a smooth, even finish again. Like here you can see this is a bit dirty when it's on, but of course things will be removed. Oh yeah, and there was a little piece of lacquer missing. I just covered that in that stuff to conserve it. And unfortunately this red super glue also ran into the sound hole, into this very sharp end of the sound hole, and I had to clean that with a sharp knife. Well, like I try to scrape off carefully as much of this super glue as I can before I sand, because otherwise you would just sand very long, and also if you're not careful, sand away the finish that you're not trying to sand away. This is it's kind of, how you say in German, it's Ziehklinge. It's a pulling blade. How what's the English word for that? I don't know. It's a scraper, basically. I think it's called scraper. You just scrape off until it's almost flush, and then you come with sandpaper and try to level it completely. I think some people like to use razor blades, but on this arched tops, the straight edge is often dangerous. I think, I don't know. There's many ways to get it right. And there's even more ways to get it wrong. Been there, done that. All right. It's important to not leave any big rocks or so behind, because then you just sand forever with this 600 grit sandpaper, or even 400. Yeah, now I start sanding it until it gets smooth. I think I started with 400 here because the varnish was pretty solid and there was nothing happening. And now it's important really that this crack is pretty level, because if you didn't glue it level, you would always start sanding into the finish and create light spots. I mean, that can happen, it's not the end of the world, but of course visually it's nicer. Like you can see, it wasn't perfect here. There's some light spots coming up. It's not perfect. Well, that's what you get sometimes. I don't want to refinish a whole instrument because of this kind of stuff. I sanded it up to, I don't know, 2000. usually 2000, and then I used polishing compounds in various degrees to buff it up. And I think buffed the whole front with this a little bit, just to get rid of all the dirt and the stuff that was collected on there for the last decades. And this is how it looks like afterwards. It's completely level and it's shiny, and it somehow, when it looked like this, actually people think this is a better repair. I think it would work fine with only glue and cleat, but it would look bad. But the quality of a repair is often judged by its visual appeal, not by its functionality, and that's how this world works. So you gotta play that game. Next step is tuner button. I will remove all the tuner buttons because I don't have spare ones that are missing, and I think it always looks bad if there's a mixed set of tuner buttons on a guitar. So if I don't have the original ones somewhere, I will put a new set on it, so it looks better, I think. The nut could be reused. I just smoothed it out a bit and re-glued it already, so the super glue has some time to cure before I put the strings on. Like 2-3 drops are usually enough. You don't want too much glue on there. And of course, when you make a video, you find your bottle is jammed. And then, easy fix with a little drill bit. Another round. And here we go. Only have one shot, so make sure it sits center. And you don't glue yourself to the guitar. So I hold it in place for a while, because super glue really gets activated best when it's a bit under pressure. Voila. Sits well, works well. This is like on many vintage guitars, not a perfect spacing anymore, but it's good enough, and I think replacing it doesn't make sense here. There's if you use round wound strings and change the strings and bend them, they will always wear off this nut at some degree, but this is okay. So now I showed you the new tuner buttons. I installed them with a drop of super glue each. This is I think rosewood buttons, and I like them for this guitar, though they could be a bit rounder, but that's what I got, that's what I use. They look good. They're very nice buttons, they feel good. Now I'll clean the tuners a bit so they work better. I use some WD-40 to clean them, and then a wire brush to get the dirt out, and then they usually work way better than before. And afterwards, of course, I get new fresh oil, because the WD-40 actually get rid not only of the dirt but also of the fat that is in there. Also, if you didn't know, if the tuners turn too tightly, Like it's too hard to turn them. Sometimes the screws are tightening too hard. There's usually screws in the tuners in this cogwheels. And if they don't turn too hard, you can just loosen them a little bit. Also when they turn too easily, you can tighten them a little bit. They have to be not tight, but also not loose, the step before. And it's important that the tuners turn smoothly, but not too freely. This is something anyone can do at home, really. Just don't tighten them too much. These screws don't have to be super tight. But if they completely loose, tighten them. Here we go. You could spend a lot more time polishing every single screw on a big polishing wheel, or I don't know what, but I just want to make this work. I don't have to shine every metal part up to super high polish. I think if you want a guitar that looks new, just buy yourself a new guitar. And old guitars, I love it when they actually look old. I just want them to work like a new guitar, but I want them to look old. I think this has way more flair, but that's just a matter of taste, of course. Some people love it when old instruments look completely new, and everyone wants their new guitar to look completely old. Not everyone, but many people. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But it keeps folks busy, and it pays. Okay, I'm checking every screw once again, and I think these tuners will be fine. These are actually nice quality tuners. Okay, here I'm scraping with a sharp knife the letters. I rewrote some of the letters that were missing, and I'm shaping them to place to the right. I'm not too good on this kind of stuff, but it looks way better than the missing letters for sure. No, actually I was cleaning this stuff. I was scoring the wood below, so this plastic goo. I melted binding and some acetone. I'm pretty sure that what this original plastic writing is made from too. I melted some binding with acetone, and now I use it to rewrite the letters. And I think the first try didn't work. You have to get this in the right. It doesn't. If it's too liquid, it doesn't work. If it's already too dry, this acetone like goes into the air pretty quickly. You have to find the right moment to do it, and then you can kind of write a bit with it with a toothpick. It's pretty rough. I just put the plastic there in the rough shape, and later shaped it with a sharp knife. So the emperor's back. This was actually the first time doing this, and it worked out kind of well. This is what guitar repair is all about. Every guitar somehow brings their own unique demands. It's way more different stuff than you would think. There's not a standard way to repair anything. And I'm happy with the results. It looks good. Not sure if I showed it properly before. The both of the E's were missing. The E at the start was missing, and the Emperor later on was also missing. I missed here a little bit of the start E. I noticed that just later. It has to be one flow, and I still filled that in. Scraping, scraping, scraping. Kratzen, kratzen, kratzen. I used a small drill bit to put this hole into the E later. This is something you can actually spend hours with to perfect it to even further, even further. You will always zoom in further the more time you spend with it. But if you actually want to live from it, you have to draw a line somewhere. This now, you can read Emperor. You can see the difference between the letters if you look closely. But you really have to look closely, and that's good enough for me, for this purpose. Here the tuners get some oil. Oh boy. Of course the bottle is almost empty, but I already feel it's almost empty since 2 years. And every day when I use it, there's another drop coming out. I'm already using this small bottle for several years. I don't know. It's amazing. Now you can check if all the tuners work as it should. And get the oil distributed everywhere. And voila. Alright, here one more time the Emperor. Still with a gap between the first E and the rest. And I still have to put the pickguard holder back onto this. Because I don't know, it was on there somehow. Probably with this kind of bridge where you just put it in, but I want to screw that on. Okay, here you can see me fastening this screw that is in a neck block. This is a Stauffer neck system, and this screw in the neck block is often... This was loose, it was sticking out, it was even leaving a print on it. I screw that back on. And here you see how a little shim is done. To change the neck angle. I don't want to change the geometry of the neck heel itself. There's this kind of signs on it. Sorry, I didn't film that. And writings, and if you get it wrong there's no way turning back. So I think shimming here is the way easier and more comfortable way to go, and it's also reversible. It's angled, I think this is a 1 or 2 degree shim. Now I clean the slots of the strings, because usually there's debris in there from the last time, and it's this kind of stuff in there that holds the string and then you have tuning problems. It doesn't take time. Also, usually you can tip the saddle in the one or the other direction, like the B or the D string, depending on the set of strings that you use, usually has to be tilted back. Like this. And I smooth a bit the notches with sandpaper. I think in this guitar you don't need to do this because there's no tremolo or this kind of vibrato system. But as I'm making a video, I'm doing this. I hope you get my kind of humor. It still feels really odd just to talk over this kind of video to me. Okay. Now comes my biggest regret when it comes to restoring this guitar. If you notice, this guitar didn't have any tuner bushings, and I did put this simple bushings on that you find on many guitars, like German guitars, like Hofner. This very basic bushings that you can just put in the holes there without drilling or anything. They are, I think, nickel, so they look right with the tuners. They look good. They work alright, but the holes were a bit too big, and the bushing started turning with the strings. I just noticed that too late, and that's not supposed to be that way, because if the bushing turns with the string, they will leave marks and they will actually not do what bushings are supposed to do. So now I noticed that when I turned on the strings, and I took the tuners back off and I drilled holes for proper tuner bushings. This guitar is often actually from factory fitted. I have no bushings, but when you use this, here you see the new holes and the marks, the bushings left. The longer time you use tuners, they will always sand away the wood next to them. So I think it's a good idea at some point of time to install some bushings. And these are very small nickel bushings. They just look good on this guitar. They don't look out of place. You have to increase a hole to 8 millimeters, and they pop in very well. Not too tight, not too loose. I use this kind of I don't know what the English word for is. This kind of, it's called a Senker in German. This way you don't risk damaging the holes. It's actually, I don't know what the English word is. Alright, now it's time to put the tuner back in, and I press too hard and some of the bushings come right out again. Yay! Classic crap. So it's time to carefully knock them back in. I use this kind of truss rod wrench to press them down with my hands. I'm not sure if I filmed that, always add a drop of oil between the tuning post and the bushing, so there's not too much friction there when you turn them. The other side worked better. I did film that. Here we go. And I think I'm almost ready to put on new strings. I always love the moment when you worked on this kind of instrument for days and then you put on strings and you hear it for the first time. That's always a great moment. I had some really boring and shitty jobs in the past. Voila! And this job is never boring. It's hard, doesn't pay well, but it's fun. Okay, here there's not full string tension on the strings yet, so I can roughly locate the bridge where it has to be. It's just a more or less for a start. I just want to hear it. This is just by ear. I just play the open string and the 12s, and it's more or less alright. I just see how everything goes. Then you still have to adjust the bridge height, and usually work on the saddle a bit. And this was a 0 fret saddle. I still had to sand the fret slots a bit lower or file them with saddle files and saws. Because if you're not careful there, the string will rest on the nut behind the 0 fret and not on the 0 fret, and then your intonation will be very, very bad. This happens when you level the fretboard and then reuse the original nut. It will be too high. And if you have a 0 fret, it means... I saw that on many guitars I bought that people worked on themselves, that this was odd. This spacer, it is actually a spacer behind the 0 fret, was too high, and then this guitar will never sound any good because the open strings are just in a different world, basically. Okay, now I can play it. Okay, there's just one thing left to do here, and that is put on the pickguard. And then you will see me actually talking on the video itself, so I will stop moderating myself. And you will see me play the guitar and talking even more about guitar stuff. But I think if you didn't turn this video off till now, you're probably interested in the nerdy guitar stuff. This is actually not so easy to get this to fit the original holes. And the pickguard itself is secured to the neck, and when you change the neck angle, the whole geometry of the thing actually changes slightly, what also makes a little problem. This is one of my least favorite things to do. think you can always spend another hour but to get the last scratch out, but I think in these old guitars it's fine. And this one plays like butter and it looks awesome and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So here's what I like to see when I play or when I buy an old ice top. It's few things to look for. The first one and easiest one everyone knows about it is fret size. The frets have to have at least a certain height to it, like 0.6 millimeters or more I think, and they should be rounded. Look, some people like it when they're flat, it's alright, but this is what I look for. Next step is of course the neck should be straight. That's what we did here. I leveled the whole fingerboard and re-fretted it, and now there's a tiny bit of bow when you put a string on, and that's okay. You're supposed to have a little bit. You can have a very low action on this one and it works. Next thing is the bridge. It's nice to see that you can adjust the bridge up and down. Like some people want to action a bit higher, you can do that. Some people want to lower it, you can do that. That's fine. This has a straight, not too big bone saddle here, but I think the intonation came out pretty good, better than you would think. It's not 100% perfect, but I think you don't bother, and that's good enough. Like, if you play an open chord E in the first frets, sounds good. It's clean. I'm not a piano tuner, but it sounds, I play for more than 30 years and it sounds good to me. If you play the same chord here with open strings and press down in 13th, 14th fret, still sounds clean. That means the bridge is positioned correctly. And you can also file the bone saddle in a certain direction. You have a 1 to 2 millimeters of room to play with here. Next thing, string spacing. Like this is majorly, this is somewhat a matter of taste. Of course the strings should be spaced evenly and you should have some room on the outer, like if the high E string for example is on the very edge, you want to do a vibrato with your finger, you kind of drop the string below the edge of the fret, and that's very annoying. Like you don't have the same problem on the deep E string. You don't really do a vibrato here at all. You can, but then if you do it, you pull it down. You're not pushing it up. I don't see any people that do that. But with this high E string, you kind of move it in both directions. So what I like to have is a little bit more room here next from the E string to the bottom than I would have here. It's not symmetrical. Sorry, I'm not an English native. And it may look like odd if you really pay attention to it, but I think you can't actually see it here. But that's the way to do it, but it's also a matter of taste. This is just how I like things to set up. If you don't like that, you can easily change that. Alright, this one is certainly an East German guitar, I'm pretty sure from the 50s, maybe early 60s. And it has a writing Emperor. I don't know who built this, unfortunately. If someone knows, please let me know in the comments. It kind of looks like a Musima, a bit, but I don't think it's a Musima, maybe a Marma. I would be really curious to know what it is. So now I will play it a bit to show you how it sounds like. This is a amazing sounding guitar. It's a 17-inch size, all solid, no pickup. I think that's what you want to have if you want to play without pickup. It's an all solid 17-inch or even bigger. This one is strung with 010 flat wounds. These guitars were not made for 010. They were probably made for 013 medium strings. But if you want to keep them in a good shape, I would not recommend putting 13 on, because it's just a strain on the guitar. And this one sounds really good with 10 strings. Some guitars with 010 strings, I don't know, they need more power, but this one doesn't. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think, and if you know what this is or the brand who made this, please let me know. See you next time.